All right, man. So I was watching the Team USA A team versus the select team or whatever, the B team.
Sure,
I
sure.
don't know. I don't know exactly how we're labeling everything, but basically, for the select team, we had J Dub in the starting lineup and Chet coming off the bench.
Sure.
There was a scrimmage. The select team beat the A team. This is something that happens pretty regularly in the warm up for international competition. We want to have the select team come out there and give the team a run. Um, there's a lot to like about what we saw. Cade Cunningham had his best basketball that we've seen since probably his time at Oklahoma State.
Sure.
Um,
It's
he looked
healthy.
like he-
Makes it all worth it.
right. He looks really good. J Dub, we saw some really good minutes from him. We saw some nice things from Chet. And then on
It's
the A team,
Corey,
what's up, Corey?
Wani,
Lonnie, what's
Jared.
up,
Man, you
buddy?
guys all pop on fast.
So I saw Chip England sitting one seat away from Jeff Van Gundy on the sideline.
Hmm.
So nice to see some basketball minds hanging out.
Alhambra.
What's up, buddy? Um, what did I think? You know what I thought, bro? I
Hmm.
thought J Dub looked really nice, although he looked a little bit like he did in the Rising Stars game, where he just didn't want to go out and like try to do too much. And on the flip side, bro, to spice things up, Ant looked like exactly the player we thought he was. He looks like a short Carmelo Anthony who all he wants to do is dribble into his shot. He wants to put the ball on the floor 7 to 12 times before he shoots. He's a ball stopper on offense and he doesn't really play defense. So he's elite at one thing, which is scoring, and he can only guard one position. And after that, he's pretty much worthless. So it's like if you're a 2 or 3, get Ant to switch on you and take him.
Bro.
If you're anything, get Ant on you. And then defensively, if you're guarding Ant, what do you want him to do, bro? You want him to dribble. You want him to dribble. You want him to dribble. Like,
What he likes to do, man.
and I shouldn't have said
We
Carmelo
listen.
because Carmelo is good at international competition. Ant looks like, honestly, he looks like the team that came before the Redeem team. He
Hmm.
looks like the best player on the worst team that the USA team has ever put out before.
I look at Ant and with all due respect to Ant and the fact that he averaged an enormous amount of points last season. Um, I go back to efficiency is king. And last year, Ant had like the second most shots out of anybody in the NBA. You know, and to me, like as much as you want to say that that shouldn't really necessarily matter if you're putting up 30 points a game, it does. You know, like
Up Smithster.
we're past that Kobe era, we're past that Carmelo era, we're past that Dwayne Wade era where these guys would just take the ball and shoot it 30 times a game, 25 times a game. Like, look at like we go back to Shea, he shot 20 times a game last season, right? That's three pointers included and everything else like that. And he averaged 30 points a game. That's why it's so crucial. It's so important that we say that these guys that we're putting up there that they can go and average 20 points a game off of 15 shots. You know, like this shouldn't be like weird knowledge. And like and I go and I keep on going back to this and like Shea is so unique that he is teaching J-Dub how to be a professional athlete. And say what you want. If you're a gambling person, betting person, right? And you're betting for the Super Bowl winner or you're betting for the NBA championship or who's going to win in the NBL and you're doing a bet beforehand, right? Like, you know, 10,000 to 1, the Oklahoma City Thunder win this next year. Type thing. You know what I'm saying? You're like, "All right, you know, I'll put $100 down on that. Why not?" You know? Um I look at this and I say like the fact is that with somebody like Shea, right? And the fact that he's teaching J Dub, my money is on J Dub's career over Ant. And when you say, dude, come on, you know, Ant is such a better player at this moment in his career. Yeah, I mean, it's like comparing a tomato and a potato right now. Like you really can't. Like, you know, like uh that's it. I mean, like I look at J Dub and I say, you know, 14 points a game doesn't compare to pretty much double and some change to what Ant does.
Well, and put
But
up
you
like
put
24.
Ant in the system and his $260 million contract. Now we're stifled on money. We can't do much, right? Now we don't have the longevity that we have with J Dub fitting the system, and it puts us in a win now situation. That's why I'll go back and I'll say it 100 times. I will never ever even consider a straight up trade for Ant for J Dub. ever, because it never makes sense. So we can go back and we can keep on talking about this or that, but I go back to Shea's 1,381 shots in 68 games, averaging 20 shots a game. Okay. That right there is more valuable than having somebody that takes the second most shots in the NBA and averages 30 something points a game.
I
Who
think he
cares?
averaged 24, bro.
Hold on. You
It
know
wasn't
what?
as good as it wasn't as good. He averaged 30
This is
against
this
the
is this is for
Nuggets.
Jay.
But
This is for Jay.
listen,
I love Jay,
here,
man.
here's what I want to say as you look that up. Jared, I agree with what you're saying. ISO ball died when the Spurs won 5 and the Warriors won 4. Here's the deal.
Yeah, 31.6 points a game.
Really?
Yeah, 31.6 points a game. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. That's playoffs.
That's what I was like. I swear, I looked it up and it wasn't that high. But...
You're right. 24.6, 31.6 in the 2 games that he played in the postseason.
All right.
Or whatever. 2 games before.
They had the series against the Nuggets. Thank you.
24.6. I'm sorry. You know what? I thought for forever, because I kept on looking at postseason. So that's even more shameful on me. Horrible, David. But now I look at that, and to me, like, is there?
Jay.
There's no way, my opinion, that J-Dub doesn't pass that 25-point mark a game before his next contract. And if you think about that, like, that's just shows you the value right there. Like, again, so looking at Ant in the last, what was it, six games of the season, I thought he was doing a lot more than 24.6. So
yeah,
that's disappointing to me, because like this shows you what wankers the Minnesota fans are.
Like what happens when we play the Timberwolves is teams, they usually play better against us. The Timberwolves, for some reason, going back to the Wiggins days and all those things, they just seem to play better against us. So, like, yeah, if you're going like I do, I only watch the Thunder games. So if I'm only going on the Thunder games and it's like Ant's a complete monster, but the rest of the league doesn't fear him. All right, first of all. Second of all, back to what Jared is saying.
I like it. Let's do it.
If you look at like those 9 championships you're referencing, Jared, how many of those was Steve Kerr a part of? I would say 6 or 7.
I mean, the Spurs, he was part of 2 or 3.
Right. So here's my thing, right?
Yeah.
Who's the head coach of the select team? No, that's like the men's team, the number 1 team, Steve Kerr.
Yeah.
You're telling me Steve Kerr wants Ant out there dribbling the ball into nothing, bro? Just deflating the ball, boom, 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 and then shooting deep threes off the dribble. Like there's 7 seconds left on the clock. Ant's just gonna pound it, shoot. Pound it, shoot.
Yeah.
Like you telling me that Steve Kerr, who usually has Steph Curry on his team, is like, yeah, Ant, just go do that. Just go jack that shot up, Ant. That's what we want. That's how we're gonna win a fucking gold medal. Ant, you just go do you, Ant. Hell no. He's sitting there and he's pissed. You ever seen him break the fucking the marker board?
Yeah.
With Steph, because Steph took a really deep shot. You ever see him react to Steph hitting the 3 where he went behind the back, between the legs, danced through everything, and then like without even really getting eye contact with the rim, jumps up and shoots and knocks it down. And what does Steve Kerr do? He acts pissed.
Yeah.
He's like, we're not going to win a championship with him shooting those types of shots, which is true. But that's a regular season game. Now Steve Kerr is coaching for FIBA Gold. There is no regular season game. It's all playoffs.
Yeah.
You got to figure out how to get Ant to play playoff basketball. And look, we've criticized Cade plenty of times on this podcast because people put him up against Shea, and it really wasn't fair to Cade, but they did. Okay. Let me tell you right now, I would take Cade as my point guard any day over Ant.
Sure. Oh yeah, dude, I would pick Cade over Ant, like eyes closed, blindfolded. I mean, it wouldn't matter, dude.
That select team has more talent and is a better team. Now they're younger. They're going to take a little bit longer, but they have a much higher ceiling than that. Like that, you're talking about JJJ, and like you're talking about a bunch of guys out there that like, oh yeah, on paper they should make a really good team.
Sure.
But dude, if I was Steve Kerr, I would be pissed about this team selection. I'd be like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Are you trying to make it so we need another redeem team? Because that's what this team looks like.
Well, still, I want to see what they can do. But if the select team is proving to beat them time and time again, then, Coach Kerr is not going to allow it. Like, he has power of that roster more than he'll actually admit to. Just as straight up as up. If he's like Cade, J-Dub, and Chet need to be on this team, and I don't want blank, 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 they're going to take those guys off. They're going to put those guys in, and it's just going to be like that. Like it could be any combination of those select guys that end up being on the big team, and I'm okay with that. We've seen it happen in the past where Coach K, I don't remember who it was, but everybody thought he was a lock. I think it might have been Isaiah Thomas or something. I don't know. This has been so long, but everybody thought he was a lock, and then all of a sudden, like he didn't get in, and then he ended up getting in because of injury. And it was just like, well, I mean, if nobody else is going to play, and I just, to me, like, I look back and it's just, I don't know, like, it is what it is, man, with FIBA. But I wanted to see a young core of FIBA. I wanted to see Cade Cunningham. I wanted to see, all these young guys, J-Dub, Chet, anybody else like that, because the reality is that this NBA is changing. It's not the same, and in 5 years, in 6 years, it's going to be all these guys that are on the select team that are going to be on that team because they're going to outplay everybody else. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to see these young players playing, just like Josh Giddey's gonna be playing and Shea and Dort. You know what I'm saying? These guys are gonna be taking serious minutes. I want our guys, young American players playing. And yes, we have some of those guys like Ant is 21, but the reality though is that none of these guys are going to be on the team in 5-6 years. They're just not. There's none of these guys.
A couple, maybe like
Okay, all right.
Halliburton.
Yes, there'll be a couple. There'll be a couple that will be like, all right, those guys surprised everybody. But the rest of
You
them,
know what I like?
it's going to
A
be
couple of guys,
swept clean, bro.
a couple of guys on the A team. Um, I think they were both on the Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. Both of those could develop into the type of 3-and-D multi-dimensional players that you could fill out a roster with. But like you go back to when KD and Russ, Steph, Harden, Kevin Love,
I know it
Lamar
was a young
Odom,
team, bro.
right? And
They started again. They pushed reset, and when they pushed reset, they went straight young, and it was so nice.
and the amount of like excitement that was behind that team, like this team cannot get close. People are excited because it's like, oh yeah, but there is an issue. I mean, the whole COVID reshuffling the schedule. Like next year is the Olympics,
Yeah.
so I understand why a lot of like U.S. players are sitting out this year, but in the end, they should have gone younger. They should have gone for these young team players that can really help fill out the roster in the future. But instead, it's like it's these guys' time now. Like I just can't imagine a future where the team looks like what it does now. I think it needs to look a lot more like the select team because the ball moves better. You have guys who understand the modern game. Like no matter what, if your team is limited by Ant being your point guard, like I'm sorry, man, like you have a ceiling.
Yeah. I mean,
And your ceiling
he's not
is
even playing a point guard role. That I mean, he's a shooting guard. Like he plays the point guard, but the problem is that that's the when you bring down the ball and you put it in Ant's hands, the ball doesn't leave Ant's hands. So essentially, he takes over that point guard role. And again, that's why when we're talking about systems, when we're talking about Oklahoma City Thunder, and you're saying I'd rather this player over this player, this player over this player, it's because it's the system that works for each of these players.
he's like the opposite of Curry, bro.
Yeah,
Like
he's
Curry
just
can play
he's
like a point
physical,
guard.
like, and when he's off, he's off.
Yeah, Curry can push the ball, initiate the offense, and then slide over into the two like the shooting guard role within the offense, right?
Yeah, but
But
look at J Dub. Let's
Ant's
just
like the two guard that as soon as the ball gets in the half court, he turns into the point guard.
yeah, but
And then
let's
just
look at J
shoots.
Dub though. Let's look at J Dub. All right, and let's just say like J Dub being able to play the defense he's able to play already, right? J Dub being able to be efficient on with the basketball in his hands as far as shooting, super efficient. 10 shots a game, 14 points a game, 75 games. I mean, that's a pretty phenomenal stat. So that he's efficient, that he can do all these other things. And that's where I keep going back to is that like if you look inside the offense, right? The ISO basketball is changing. There is no, and this is Jared brought this up, but there ISO basketball, in my opinion, has been changing very seriously ever since I want to say about 3 years ago is when I first started change. I'm noticing that the Oklahoma City Thunder weren't about drafting and picking some of these ISO basketball players that are so unique and so good, and I was just like, why aren't we going over some of these ISO players? And the second I started figuring out it was about a team, it was about a system, right? And you start thinking about players that get drafted, and whether it doesn't matter what sport it is, but everybody's like, that player would never be really good. And then all of a sudden you hear about the triangle offense, you know, and that player becomes the world's best player, maybe ever, you know? And then you start noticing that some of these players that people didn't think were going to be very good end up becoming truly spectacular. And it's because of the system. I think about Tom Brady. You know, my granddad, who's a dumbass, says to me, he says, Tom Brady isn't a good quarterback. He's a great systems quarterback. That's it. That's it. He'll be known as a good systems quarterback the rest of his life. That's it. That's it. I don't want to hear anything else. You know, and anybody that wins as many as Tom has won, right? I think it's like 7, right? Or 8, whatever it is. It doesn't even matter anymore.
I think it's 7, but who
But
knows?
but like, is because the Giants took 2 away and the Eagles took 2 away. Yeah, it's 7 or 1 away. The Eagles took 1 away. So I look at that, man, and I keep going back to it, and I keep thinking, like, when a great player goes into a great system, there's no player that would be a good substitute. You know, like, you could say, listen, like, let's just say Bronny James is the second coming of LeBron James. It just, you know, let's just shits and giggles, you know, and you're saying, oh man, I would love to have that player inside of our system. And you're like looking at it like, how would he fit? Like, and that's what I keep going back to over and over again. I want to see players in the system that fit because it makes the system look so powerful. And some of these players that are learning how to fit, like Trey Mann still, right? Like, if they figure it out, they're going to be incredible, incredible assets. Like, they could average a lot of points a game. As simple as that. But it's all about figuring out the system. J-Dub figured it out in what, like 15, 20 games? You know, like, that's what I'm saying. Is there some players like J-Dub that sit there and it clicks? I don't think that Ant could come and play on this team and average 25 points a game because we wouldn't give him as many shots as he needs in order to average 25 points a game. He just wouldn't, you know, and that's where it comes back down to is that I look at J-Dub, he could average 21 points a game off of 15 shots next year. You know? And how can you say to me that is less valuable than somebody that is scoring 24.6 points a game off of 24 shots a game? And like, I get it. I get it. He plays in Minnesota, so Minnesota fans are always going to say yes, 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 yes. And I can understand the same thing about Victor. Whatever, right? I can get that from San Antonio people. Like, oh well, this is what we would rather, right? But if you're saying to me that I can have a 30-point player that's 7'4", right, who can score 30 points a game, okay, that can play what I would consider decent defense, even though we don't know how good of defense he's going to be able to play, or would I rather have a player that can average 20 points a game, average, 15 rebounds, and average 5 blocks a game that fits into our system properly? And it's without blinking, I would say Chet, because he fits our system. He's going to fit in well. He's going to play that system exactly the way we need to. And by the time he's done and he's averaging 20 points a game and he's becoming a vet, right? Like, people are going to look at it and be like, wow, Victor can score out of this world. But look at what Chet can do. That's MVP numbers. Scoring out of this world, MVP numbers. And we can talk about every single player down the line of who Sam Presti has drafted and how they would fit into the system or how they wouldn't fit in the system if we drafted somebody else. And it keeps going back to it, man. Like, we're picking players that have the idea of understanding that it takes a special player to have professional habits. And if you can find those players that are okay with having professional habits, then guess what? You have a potential star there. And that's it. There's nothing that should be weird about that or odd about that. It's just, if you have that special talent and you have a place that you could go and that you can sit there and you can learn how to use that, like the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they sit there and they teach these guys so damn well. I mean, so damn well. Josh, like, anywhere else, Josh Giddey right now is a phenomenal point guard, right? If he's playing for Orlando, he looks good, right? But we put him in Oklahoma City. I think it was Jay that said that he shot 50% with layups, right? If he contested layups, if he learns to get through that, which I know he can, and he can get that up to 60 this year, right? You know, like that's a few extra points a game. You know, if he learns to get that contact call, which I know he's going to do, man. Everybody's talking like they're not going to give, young players calls. You know why they're going to start giving young players calls is because they're going to recognize the NBA is changing. These are the young guys that are going to be here for the next decade, and it's not like this was, where LeBron James comes in and for the next 20 years he dominated the NBA, like this is what it is for the entire, cycle of young players coming up now is everybody knows these guys are going to be here for a while. Why? Because we all understand that taking care of your players now at a better level than we did in the 90s and the early 2000s. We're not going to put LeBron James out if we had him on our team for, 40 minutes a game, 44 minutes a game. We're not going to do that for an entire 3-4 seasons. That's not how we roll. Like we're not going to expect Shea to have an insane amount of minutes every single game. I mean, he might at one point or twice in his career while he's playing and we have an incredible opportunity to break records and all that shit. Like I could see him playing 40 minutes a game, 1 or 2 seasons in his career. But I don't think we'll ever expect that out of him. And because of that, we'll be able to see Shea for 15 years if he decides to stay here. That's what's fun, man.
Mm-hmm. So what's up, Eclipse? What up, Unk?
Unk.
Jared, back to you again. He says he's Team USA all the way. But what do you think about
Team
Canadian
Canada?
Team? Look, generally speaking, in every one of these events, I thought, yeah, go USA kind of vibes. But I mean, here's what I'd say: that team does not cut it. It's going to be Team Canada, Team Australia, or another team that wins this one.
All right.
I'm sorry. They just don't have it. Team USA, like you go Ant and Brandon Ingram are your two best players. No.
I want to say this is that I still think that Team USA has an opportunity to do some damage. But I do expect, depending on the seeding, it's all about seeding, man. It's all about seeding and all that other stuff, and who's decides to come out and play because, Australia has a really tough schedule. So I look at it like this: if we end up being in the same side as both Australia and Canada, then we're not going to even play for a third place game. But if those two teams get separated, and I think there's another couple teams that I would be concerned about as well, like we could end up sneaking through to the third place or maybe even getting to the championship game if we get like Chet and J-Dub and Cade Cunningham and some of these other younger players playing. So again, it's just, I don't know. Team Canada, I really like Team Canada. And the thing is that everybody's sleeping on Team Canada. Everybody is like they're all focused elsewhere, and that's why for me, if I'm Team Canada, I'm like, hey guys, this is the year that we stamp it. This is the year that we make ourselves known.
It makes a lot of sense. Unk asked, is Minnesota even going to make it to the playoffs this coming year? I would say so.
On Serbia.
I would say there's a good chance they find themselves in a similar spot that they were this year.
Oh yeah.
Although
I think around 40 games.
The Pelicans, who people felt like were going to take a step up and then, got knocked out by us and the play-in. So you don't know. You don't know.
Dude, it's all about injury, man. It's all about the usage. It's all about these players. Like if these guys can come out and they can put up 50 wins this next year, which I think there's going to be 4 teams, maybe 5 teams that win 50 games in the West this year, because there's just too many teams that are going to be not trying to win or resetting, and I think there's going to be teams like the Utah Jazz that aren't settled on some of the players they have right now, and that will take, a couple of first round draft picks for this player or that player still, so I think there's teams like that will be able to boom. I think San Antonio's at the bottom of the barrel. I think, Utah Jazz is a question mark. I think the Pelicans are a question mark because if they trade Zion, then what are you going to do? To me, there's so many teams
playing good basketball even without Zion.
Dude, I think there's a lot of teams that are going to be under 35 wins this year in the West, and because of that, it's going to allow a lot of the West teams to get 50 wins, and that's what's exciting to me. Like, we're not even talking about so many different question marks. Like, what happens if Ant gets injured? and then all of a sudden they just suck. That's my point, is that Minnesota is one injury away from being on the bottom of the barrel, and you've got Pelicans, another one player away from being bottom of the barrel, and then you've got San Antonio Spurs are obviously there, and who am I? I'm forgetting another West team that just sucks this last year. Fuck, man, my mind today,
The
dude.
Rockets,
Um,
but
yeah, dude, you got Houston and Portland and San Antonio
yeah.
are all teams that I think are just going to suck this year. I think you have in the middle group, you've got Utah, Dallas, Pelicans, and Minnesota, right? Okay, that's the question mark group. Like, which of those teams are going to be able to pull their heads out of the ass? And then you got the old group: Lakers, Golden State, Clippers, Phoenix, and Denver. You've got Memphis and Sacramento as your young group that's above the rest at this moment. So you've got 53 for Denver, 51 for Memphis, Sacramento 48, and Phoenix 45. I think those four next year will be around 50 wins each. Not those teams, but I'm saying the top four teams in the West will be around 50 wins. And that I can say that without questioning. Cleveland Cavaliers, the fourth team in the East, 51. Philadelphia 54. 57, and Milwaukee 58. So they're just look across the East. That's what I think it will be like in the West next year. Could even be the fifth or even sixth seed, see close to 50 wins as well. So it's going to be crazy, man. I really do think that there's going to be teams that are going to be like, we don't want to win. And if you look at it, there's five teams that aren't going to make the playoffs in the West. Okay. So if you take those five teams and they don't even win, 35 games, and then you put the Pelicans, which wins, let's just say, be nice, and wins like 38 games, and they make the playoffs. I mean, that just tells you, the state of what everybody's trying so badly to do is reset without looking horrible for 2 years like the Thunder, which doesn't work. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. You gotta take the shit and you gotta throw it in, and hopefully you can get a player from a trade that is as good as a star-like player that you can build around, like Shea or like Victor. Like you can start your build around those players, but they are not players that you're going to necessarily get and be like, oh yeah, we're ready to compete. They're players that you say, like Shea, this guy is going to be good in 2 or 3 years. And that's what we believed. I mean, we believed that he was going to be MVP caliber in 2 or 3 years when, second year that we saw 35 games from him from the Thunder. And he shot like an insane amount. Mark and I were like, he's going to be MVP caliber in 2 or 3 years. It's going to happen. Like we knew it. That's where we're at, man. Here we go. We got a call in. Oh,
Smitsta, I want to ask you real quick. No, Dave, as we do this, he says he would take Giddey over Cade in a redraft. How do you feel about that? What's up, Unc?
All right. So you said you would take Giddey over. What's up, man? All right. So Giddey over Cade in a redraft. Okay. So here's the thing. I think Giddey is going to have more games played throughout his career, just because his body is going to be able to handle the abuse in the NBA more. I do think that he is going to have more triple doubles in his life. I think he's going to have more rebounds in his career, and I think you have more assists in his career, but I don't think he's going to have more points. And I think that's the thing that you have to look at is, where does that value come on in points? Do you think that Cade Cunningham will have, a couple of seasons where he has like 27, 28, 29 points? Sure. But are those seasons going to be, outdone by Josh Giddey's triple-double seasons that he's inevitably going to have? I mean, that's where I look at it and I say, if I'm drafting Cade as if right now, or if I'm drafting one point guard right now, like I would have a hard time going Josh Giddey over Cade. And this is just out of respect for, where Cade's at. But you're talking, if I'm doing, which I draft as Thunder fan, I draft for 5, 10, 15 years down the road.
Right.
For that, because his longevity of his career is going to be much, much more elite when I look at Cade, who probably is going to miss 3 to 4 seasons throughout the next 10 years.
We hope not. We hope not.
I mean,
so Unc, what's up, buddy? You said that the preseason schedule's out.
Yeah, I just saw that. I think they have 5 games, 4 home games, and then 1 away. Their first game is with San Antonio, though, on the 9th.
Ooh. All right. On the 9th of October. Is that right?
Yep.
Done.
Oh, well. Circle that date. That's a couple months away now.
We're going to get some shit talking on that one.
Hey, I was going to ask you about, when I came in here, you were talking about the West, and you think there could be 3 or 4 teams that have 50 wins this year.
Yeah.
In saying that, what's the record? What do you think the record is going to be for the Eastern Conference then? Because if that's the case, there's going to be some teams that aren't even 500 maybe that could make the playoffs.
So that happens sometimes.
Let's go to the East on this. So when you have 4 teams that make it to 50 games, they have Indiana, Washington with 35 wins each, Orlando 34, Charlotte 27, 27, and Detroit 17. I think the West will look very similar to that. I think the bottom 4 teams will all have, or 5 teams will all have under 35 wins.
Wow.
And I think it's just the way the league's going. And I think Toronto had 41 and Chicago had 40. We had 40. Pelicans and Minnesota have 42 wins. So if you look at it like that, I think that there's going to be something to be said here. I don't know where the line's going to be at, where 30 lines are at, but I do think that we're going to have 3, 4, even 5 teams with 50 wins. And it's just because people are going to recognize that the new game doesn't fit their game. And if I was the Pelicans, I'd be trading. I would be trading all my guys right now because it doesn't fit the new system. And when you reset like that, your teams just go boom. And I could just see a lot of teams get to like 24 wins and be like, I don't want to win any more wins. I want to reset because this year, decent draft. Next year, you've got the opportunity of some pretty good players. And then the year after, you've got that one player from Maine, Cooper.
Flag,
right? And that's my point. If you look at that, if you're starting your rebuild, you want to start your rebuild 2 to 3 years before the big draft comes. And that draft right there is my opinion is something you're circling. So a lot of these teams like the Pelicans and like Minnesota could even be like in that position if they get injuries is like, we need to reset. We need to trade some of our players and reset for this next wave of players coming.
So do you think Giddey is going to take a step back in scoring? That seems to be like 2 people think Giddey and Shea might take a step back while some other players step up. How do you feel about that?
What did he average last year? About 15 or 16? I think
16.
he'll be pretty close to the same probably this year. I like Dave was saying the other day, like y'all were talking about yesterday, and they might be able to score 120 or more this year.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I'm interested in that.
He'll be about the same. Shade's gonna. I don't know if he can go 30 this year. I just think the team. There's too much. Not that he can't do it, but I think that he's, like we said before, a team player. He might come back a couple of 2 or 3 points.
Sure.
J-Dub, I think he can average, like you said, 20 points a game or more, but it just depends on how much of a team player y'all, we want to be. And I think they are team players. I like I said in the comments yesterday, it doesn't matter how many points you have or this person has or that. The bottom line is just a win. And I think these are the guys, the mentality for them is just to win, regardless whether you put up, 15 points or 30 points. I think it's, a good group of same kind of a thought with all of them is we need to win.
Team first type mentality. I shared in the chat a link for the Team USA versus the select team that I just watched this morning.
The video.
You get to see Chet come in off the bench and play some minutes. I thought he looked really good defensively, although whatever. And then they threw there was a nice alley-oop where he got a dunk or laid it in. really good elements from Chet. Obviously, J-Dub looked very, very good out
He
there.
looks so strong, bro.
So strong.
The one thing that you sent me that I watched was like him
So
just
much
bodying
finesse
up.
and strength.
Yeah.
And he was guarding Brandon Ingram from the tip. So you can kind of see how they're kind of seeing his game. I think that's really a fascinating matchup for him. And I think it's really positive to see maybe how the team could use him going forward, because like he did have that matchup last year, I think sometimes, but it wasn't necessarily a favorable one for him.
Sure.
This year, I think it will be favorable. And if you can move Dort off of BI, because BI can just do whatever he wants on Dort, it seems like even if Dort plays his best,
Yeah.
Ingram can just shoot right over top, and you move J-Dub on him, it's going to make him uncomfortable.
Sure.
So our depth is very, very exciting.
Not just on offense, but on defense, man.
I agree.
Mark, where were you able to watch that at? Was it just some clips, or
YouTube.
was it
It was on YouTube.
Was it the full game?
Yeah, it was. It was just a scrimmage, but
yeah,
I put it in the chat just now. I put a link.
Okay,
in there.
okay,
You can see that there. Yeah, like it's right beneath your message, but I think there's a lot to learn from it. A lot to learn from what's going on with the A team and then the select team. I think the A team is a complete clusterfuck. Yeah. I think the select team has a real great chance. I think Chet and J-Dub are a big part of that.
Sure.
I like Keegan Murray. I like a couple of guys on the A team, like we talked about. But yeah, like Jared's saying, Dub looks smooth. He also looks like he's not trying, because this is not his.
He likes to get comfortable with people before he like shines. It's going to take him a little while.
Yeah. So we're all looking for that together. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up right here. We appreciate everybody joining us.
Yeah, guys.
Glad to have you here. We're going to make sure it gets uploaded before we say goodbye. But we love you guys, and we will see you on Monday.
All right, guys. Take it easy.